Punctuation is a critical element not only in pacing our language, but also in creating meaning. When reading aloud, punctuation controls our rate and our emotion. A loose analogy of punctuation within text would be the relationship of traffic signals to driving a car. You need to understand traffic signals in order to operate the vehicle safely. A comma tells us to separate ideas or to pause. It's kind of like a road sign that tells us to slow down through a town or to proceed cautiously. As you heed those road signs, the car physically slows down. Its dynamic changes slightly. When you encounter a comma in a sentence, your pacing changes. If reading aloud, your voice changes. Most people have little trouble with commas in separating ideas in a series or writing dates and addresses. The most difficult concept, and the one that could drastically change meaning, involves what we call essential and non-essential items. Sometimes they're referred to as restrictive and non-restrictive, but I think essential and non-essential make more sense. With this use of commas, I'll talk about appositives, phrases, and clauses, though a complete understanding of them is not critical to this lesson. I'll give you a quick overview. Simply, an appositive is a noun that typically follows another noun to explain it further. Here's a sample sentence. My dog, Gracie, is a chocolate lab. In this sentence, I separated the name of my dog with commas. That's because I have only one dog, so naming her is not essential in distinguishing her from another dog. So, as a reader, you get additional meaning from the sentence by my use of commas. Gracie is the appositive in the sentence. In this case, it's not necessary for meaning. If you think an element is non-essential, you can figuratively grab the two commas like handles and pull the element out of the sentence, and it wouldn't change the meaning. Here's a sentence with an essential element. My cat Midnight has been missing for 4 days. Since I did not surround the cat's name with commas, I'm indicating that it is essential in the sentence. In reality, I have more than one cat, so I need to distinguish Midnight from my other cats. Midnight is the appositive in this sentence, and it's necessary for clear meaning. If you were only listening and not able to read a sentence, you may still be able to distinguish essential and non-essential elements. Listen to how I speak the same sentence in two different ways. The name Cliff is the appositive in the sentence. My friend Cliff is a police officer. My friend Cliff is a police officer. In the first sentence, the name Cliff is an essential element. Listen again to the first sentence. My friend Cliff is a police officer. Now in the second sentence, my voice actually changes slightly when the element is non-essential. Listen again. My friend Cliff is a police officer. The commas in the written version cause me to slow down for that element in the sentence. In spoken language, we obviously don't speak the punctuation, but we still acknowledge that an element is essential or non-essential. Sadly, since Cliff is surrounded by commas, the second sentence indicates that I have only one friend. Let's try more challenging construction. A phrase is a group of words that acts as a single part of speech. The type of phrase that applies to the essential and non-essential concept is the participial phrase. A participle is basically a verb form that's being used as an adjective. And since it is derived from a verb, the participle can take modifiers. Again, don't worry about the fine points. Let's just see how the phrase acts within the sentence. Here's a sample sentence. The front door, damaged by the strong wind, should be repaired before the next storm. The phrase, damaged by the strong wind, is non-essential. Typically, a house has only one front door, so it is not necessary to distinguish the door from another front door. The phrase is surrounded by commas and can be removed from the sentence without changing meaning. Now listen to a sentence with a phrase as an essential element. The window shattered by the baseball is in the rear of the house. The phrase shattered by the baseball is essential in clarifying which window had been broken. Again, listen to the way my voice changes in reading the non-essential and essential elements respectively. The front door, damaged by the strong wind, should be repaired before the next storm. The window shattered by the baseball is in the rear of the house. Now listen to a few sentences and see if you can distinguish the participial phrase as being essential or non-essential. Clara, exhausted from hiking, went to bed without dinner. If you said non-essential, you are correct. Unless there was more than one Clara, we didn't need to distinguish her with the phrase exhausted from hiking. Try another. The home team members entered their locker room, crowded with reporters. Again, the phrase is non-essential. Since all the team members entered their own locker room, crowded with reporters does not distinguish it from another locker room. What's different about this sentence is that the phrase ends the sentence. Although the second piece of punctuation is not a comma, the period at the end helps to signify a non-essential element. Let's try one more. Children traumatized by tragedy need special counseling. If you said essential, you are correct. Not all children need special counseling. The phrase traumatized by tragedy is critical in distinguishing which children. Therefore, the phrase is essential to the meaning of the sentence. Now, a clause follows the same rule, but the constructions are a little more complex. A clause is a group of words containing a subject and a predicate and used as part of a sentence. Some clauses can stand by themselves. We call them independent clauses, which are basically simple sentences. However, we want to focus on dependent or subordinate clauses, in particular, adjective clauses. An adjective clause modifies, describes, or limits a noun in the sentence, just as participles do. Appositives restate nouns. Let's look at a sample sentence with an essential clause. The road which we traveled is an interstate highway. The clause which we traveled is necessary for meaning. If I had just said the road is an interstate highway, you might say, which road? Let's look at a sentence with a non-essential clause. Frederick's twin brother, who is also a soccer player, chose to take a gap year and not attend college in September. In this sentence, the adjective clause, who is also a soccer player, is not essential to the meaning of the sentence. If the sentence did not have the word twin, however, the clause may have been essential. Now listen to a few sentences and see if you can distinguish the adjective clause as being essential or non-essential. Again, listen to the way my voice changes slightly. Only products that do not contain preservatives are sold in the health food store. If you labeled the adjective clause that do not contain preservatives as essential, you are correct. Without the clause, the meaning of the sentence would be lost. Try another. The Hudson River, which is 315 miles long, flows from Lake Tier of the Clouds to the Atlantic Ocean. I bet you recognize the adjective clause, which is 315 miles long. Since there is only one Hudson River, the clause is non-essential, and it would be surrounded by commas. Let's try one more. George Washington, who died in 1799, worked as a surveyor before the French and Indian War. Clearly, the clause, who died in 1799, is the non-essential element. Based on the other ideas in the sentence, the subject does not need to be distinguished from another George Washington. One use of the comma is to separate non-essential elements within a sentence. See if you can grab the commas and pull the element out of the sentence, whether it's a single word like an appositive, a phrase, or a clause. If you can remove it without changing the meaning or making the sentence less clear, then the element is non-essential.